All right, so Beaufort is a property that I secured for a client back in February last year. We bought it for $705,000. He spent $150 on the granny flat in the backyard, which is a 2-bedroom granny flat. He spent another $15 on doing a couple of cosmetics on the main house. As you can see, it's nice and close to the water. Now that would raise some questions of people in regards to whether there was flood overlays on this property. Step one for me is questioning, is there any coastal overlays or is there any potential flooding overlays because there might be a nearby creek associated with that property, and what does that picture look like in it? Because if we buy flooded property, you're going to be looking at higher insurance first thing. So those insurance premiums can get absolutely crazy, where they can be up to 10 or 12 grand a year, which is absolutely nuts. And that's just because of the potential risk. So step number one is, for me, running a flood check. And you can see here all green. I will now bring up one that's on the same street where you can see that there is a couple of issues in regards to the property itself. And you can see that it ticks a few of those boxes through there. You scroll down a little bit and you can actually see how bad those flooding levels are on the property. And you scroll down a bit more and you can see what that coastal tidal surging can look like. Which means when you come back up here from a build perspective, what they're recommending is they're recommending the increase of the ground by that much, which if you're going to build something, is going to increase your cost, and it's also going to increase your insurance policy. So if it's got flooding over it, I usually forget it. So just type in flood map Moreton Bay, comes up with this, comes to here. I just go to the property. I'll share this quickly. I just go copy, and then you go throw the address in there, you press that. This is just for Moreton Bay, so if you're in Brisbane it's a different website and it's not as great. If you're in Redlands it's a different website and it's not as great. If you're in Logan it's a different website, it's not as great. And if you're in Ipswich it's same sort of thing. So each council area has a different setup. Moreton Bay for me has got that top pick when it comes to it, and then it generates this beautiful little PDF report here. And then I copy that and I send it to my client. The other thing that I do is I do a check in Moreton Bay to see what the zoning is over the property. So you can see Beaufort is here, that street there. The property in question is where that sort of cursor mouse is down here, which is not showing up that great. Now, when I move up, you can see that it's all light blue, okay? Light blue has got a minimum 5 meter high build height with a maximum 21 meter build height. So there is the opportunity of developing that site. So down the track, you're going to be able to put in greater density on that site, and it's understanding that. So not only is there the rental income, not only is there the proximity to water with no flood overlay, there's also development opportunity in the future, which for me makes this property a great, outstanding property from that capital appreciation point of view. So it's understanding that there's multiple different facets to help the value of this land grow, which then increases the capital price of that property moving into the future. Another property I secured for a client is this one over here. The main picture's not working, and it's just, around the corner from where it is. So the client has actually rented this one out. That backyard is going to get a granny flat in it. So he's actually put a fence across the backyard, rented out the main house, and the granny flat's going in the next week or so. And I'm just going to show a different screen. You can sort of see it's a great strategy. It's a good way. So you can see there that they've rented this one out. You can see they've drawn that line. That vacant block of dirt is now the granny flat side of things, and I don't think there's any real drone shots of the location in that one. And then they're going to have the entrance onto the side there to be able to get in and out of the property itself. And the proximity of this to the water is right there. So you can see the property's right there and the water's right there. So from where that is down to there's a short 5-minute walk. And then once again, you can sort of look at it, and you can see the one across the street actually sold. So the one across the street is actually this property here. So you can see right here that there's a whole heap of flooding overlay on that property, which means getting a granny flat in the back. Yeah, they've missed that. So getting a granny flat in the backyard is going to be extremely difficult on that property, where the one that I secured for my client, and that's this one here, if we scroll down, we can see all the green checks. And if we keep scrolling down, we can see it's just a simple 6-page report where they put their usual stuff in. Where the flooded ones, and I'll go back to that, you can see that it's an 11-page report. So you can see the 11 pages up the top there. You can see that they outline the parameter of the actual property. And then you can see that it's got a 5%, a 1%, and a 0.01% flood event overlay on it. And then it tells you what those minimum ground elevations are from a future build point of view, which is going to increase those costs. And then it shows you how much water it's going to be affected by in the area. And then obviously it does the rest of its conversation of talking and all the other information, everything like that. If you're going to be forking out $12,000 a year in insurance on a property that's got a flood overlay on it, how is that going to impact your holding costs? Council's not going to say, yeah, it floods, throw a granny flat in the backyard. You're not going to be able to get that extra money flowing in on that asset. To build anything on that site, you're going to have to raise the ground level up. And that's going to add huge dollars to it. So having to raise the ground height or raise the property itself, because you're allowed to build, but it has to be like a carport and a staircase. And then the house has to be up higher. So be like a 3-story house. And in that area, they have got a couple of houses where they've gone and added in 3 stories. But that adds in extra engineering, that adds in extra cost, and those properties become a lot more expensive to build. So you can see here, 3-story house, downstairs is going to be a garage. Okay, so to add that extra cost and build to it is just exponential. Now, yes, the location is great, and yes, that there is the waterfront and Deception Bay, and that water that you see in and around the area, but that adds extra cost to it. So by adding, by buying a property in those flood zones, here's another one here, you add in that extra cost. So you can see downstairs of the property, there's a fully enclosed garage, and then underneath the rest of it is just slats. And then the house itself is above that water level. You've got to build that whole bottom floor underneath because of flood zone, which makes the build have to be a lot higher, and that increases your expense. If you go out and have a conversation with a builder and say, hey, what's the cost difference between a 2-story and a 3-story? It's going to be very sizable, and effectively you're having to build a 3-story home because of that flooding. So by being able to know where those areas are, by understanding where those flood areas are and what that flood zoning looks like, you can minimize your future development cost on a site while maximizing your return. And you can also save a huge amount of money on insurance premiums, which affects your total return on the property, because with a huge insurance premium, that's going to increase that negative cash flow on that house quite substantially, and that's going to impact you, especially when you can't negative gear anymore. So having that is, huge.